I'm all ears. How can philosophy help you, my friend?
Hello, Mr. Molyneux.
How
Hi,
you
I'm
doing?
a huge fan, long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm from Toronto as well. I was living in the Don Mills area not long ago. I tried to explore those areas you mentioned, the old mall and the path by the river. That used to be my running route. Anyways, I recommend you to everyone. I mostly love you, but there's a few serious issues I have with you. And just to pick on one of them, I remember on one of your call-ins, um, you kind of carelessly said that a 17-year-old boy should get jailed for example, sharing leaks of his ex-girlfriend. And would you say that's a mistake, a careless thing you said?
Without context, if you don't have quotes, I'm not sure what the
Yeah.
circumstances were. I'm not sure what the context was. I'm certainly happy to talk about it further, but do you remember any of the
Mm.
details of the conversation?
Unfortunately not, but you tend to have this position in general. So if I were to ask you right now, if a seven,
Sorry, hang on. What is the position I have in general?
you're super sensitive to anything to do with early sexuality, and you would always take like,
Okay, so hang on. So you've gone from a specific complaint to a general accusation to now an emotional motivation, like I'm super
oh
sensitive
yeah,
to early
yeah. So
sexuality.
I'm sure this is a deep rabbit hole which has deep emotional roots for both of us probably, but including you. You get very emotional when this topic comes up, which is fine.
Why are you bringing up my
Well,
emotions
this
when we're trying
this
to have a
this
discussion about
well,
philosophy? I
I
mean, that's poisoning the
well, I
well.
mean, one of the reasons why I love this show is because we go into the emotional roots of things. But I'm fine with sticking to the philosophy. So if I were to ask you,
No, hang on. So going into the emotional roots of things is asking questions to people about their thoughts, their histories, their feelings, their childhoods, or whatever. It's not jumping into a conversation assuming an irrational emotional oversensitivity on the part of another. That's kind of being a
well,
troll,
I've
right?
been following you for over a decade. I'm familiar with your views on this.
Good. Then you should absolutely know what you're doing when it comes to reasoning with people. You have the reason I'm being harsh is you have no excuse. You've been following me for a long time. So coming up and saying, "Oh, Steph, you're just so super sensitive and irrational about this topic," when you can't even remember the details of the
I mean,
criticism, is being a
no,
troll.
I'm not trolling. I'm sincerely trying to help. This is not concerned trolling. I'm seriously trying to correct you here. I could be wrong, but so for example, let's stick to the philosophy. What would you say that a 17-year-old should be jailed for sharing leaks of his girlfriend?
How old is the
Let's
girlfriend?
say 16.
I think that sharing a child's nude pictures on the internet is a huge problem. If the person is 17, then the person would be tried, I assume, as a child and therefore would not go to an adult jail, but would receive some kind of correction because sharing sexually explicit images of a child to the general population is really, really bad.
So you'll notice that you didn't answer the question, and you're kind of.
Okay, hang on. Okay. Are we just going to fight? Is that your goal?
I,
Because you're really being
I wish you
insulting.
would just have said no. He should not go to jail. That's the simple answer.
I did say no, he
No,
should
you
not
did
go
not
to
say
jail.
that.
If you listened carefully, I said he would not be tried as an adult, so jail would be inappropriate, but he should go to he would have some sort of
Yeah,
correction. I don't know
that's a nap
exactly what that should be.
violation.
That's
That's
a
a
what?
nap violation. He shouldn't be forced to do anything against his will. He did nothing wrong, according to the UPB. I mean, that we're begging the question, I suppose. Did he do anything wrong? Was did
Yeah, he did
a
something wrong.
UPB violation, however?
He did something
So
wrong,
what was
sure.
the UPB violation that he did by sharing a picture?
Well, because a child cannot consent. Well, there's two things that he did wrong. Number one, he shared sexually explicit images of a child who cannot consent. Therefore, he did something against consent. That's number one. And number two, we assume that he violated an implicit contract in that if you send sexually explicit images to someone, you assume that that person is not going to share them. That's an implicit contract. In other words, if somebody takes a picture of you or you send a picture of yourself in a sexual way to someone, that is sent with the assumption that the person is not going to share it. If I tell you something really, really important in confidence, and then you go and tell it to everyone and it has significant negative impacts, then yeah, that would be something that would be sanctionable. So on two levels, he's sharing explicit pictures from somebody who cannot consent in the abstract and someone who did not consent in the specific, in that the implied contract of sending sexually explicit pictures is that they're not shared with the internet.
I mean, first,
so it's a break in contract.
First of all, they're his pictures, and they're up to. You can make the argument that they're his pictures; it's his property. And second of all, I mean, the implied contract idea, like what exactly was the contract? That if he shares them, he's going to get physically punished? I don't think he ever would have agreed to that. I think it's more of a softer thing, like it's aesthetically unpreferred behavior, but nothing that rises to the label of something that can be physically punished. I don't think that's part of the implied contract, actually.
But you're just stating an opinion. I'm stating
no.
You're just saying I don't think so. But that's not an argument, and you should know how to make an argument. If you listen to me, as you claim for 10 years, you should know how to formulate it.
The question is, what do you think the implied contract was if he broke it? Like, what do you think the clause would have been implicitly if he had?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I already explained that. Were you not listening?
You didn't specify what the punishment should be.
I absolutely did.
You just said you said that there is an implied contract, which I agree with, but the devil's in the details. Like, what specifically do you think the contract implies? I think in most people's opinions, you should not go to jail for sharing pictures.
Remember what we can't have we can't have a debate if you don't listen.
You did not specify what the punishment should be.
Okay, now you're moving the goalpost. First of all, you said I need to specify.
No, the goalpost was jail.
Which, hang on, okay, we can't both talk at the same time. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so first you asked me what was the implied contract, and I said I already explained that. And now you're saying I have to give you the specific punishment, which I said I can't do because in a free society I don't know how it would be handled. So I'm not sure you're listening. I think you're here to troll.
No,
but if you want to make another point,
my opening question was whether he should go to jail. I did not move the goalpost, and you did not answer yes or no. And then you vaguely said it's implied that he should maybe go to jail, but you didn't specify anything. My original goalpost was jail.
Right.
So I did not move the goalpost.
And what did I say about that? Well, hang on. I'm just curious.
You didn't answer.
Listening.
You didn't answer.
So
you said he should go to juvenile jail.
I didn't say he should go. He should face some kind of sanction as a minor. I don't know exactly what that would be. Certainly not in a free society. But yeah, he should face some kind of sanction because he shared explicit pictures of a child against her consent.
First of all, it's not up to her to give consent, in my opinion. It's his picture. She gave it to him.
Yes, she gave it to him with the implied contract that he would not share it, because if he had said to her, if he'd been honest, right? If he had said to her, if you share me these explicit pictures, I will put them out there on the internet for everyone to see, she would not have shared them. In the same way, if you go into a restaurant and you say, I am not going to pay for my meal, they will not serve you. The implied contract is you order the meal and you're going to pay for it at the end. That's the implied contract. If you get into a cab and you say, I am not going to pay, I'm just going to open the door and run away, the cab driver will not take you. So there are implied contracts all over the place, all the time in society. You don't sign a contract in a movie theater to say you're not going to shine flashlights around, set off fireworks and scream at the top of your lungs. But if you do, they'll kick you out. So there are implied contracts everywhere, all the time in society. Do you admit that?
Of course, yes. Again, the question is,
okay, so do you admit that if you... Hang on. Do you admit that if someone sends sexually explicit pictures to someone else, which is unwise in general, but this is a 16-year-old kid, so whatever, she doesn't know what she's doing in that way. So if you send sexually explicit pictures to someone, is there an implied contract that they will not share it on the internet or with others?
I mean, I want to say, I'll say, yeah, sure. I'll go with you here. I'll look to be difficult.
So then he broke an implicit contract and he's subject to sanctions.
But again, what sanction? I initially asked you whether he should be jailed and you didn't say no.
Okay, what did I say?
He'll be tried as a juvenile, whatever that means. That doesn't mean much to me. Juveniles can go to jail as well.
Well, I'm sorry you don't understand how courts and the law work, but that's scarcely.
He should not be forced to go into a courtrum.
He broke it.
Yeah, so he should be shamed. Perhaps he should be shamed.
Okay, hang on, bro. You got to let me talk, okay? It is supposed to be my show. Try not to be too rude. So, if you break an implicit contract, you can be hauled into a court. Of course you can. If you don't pay for your meal, you can be hauled into a
Okay, but
court.
okay.
When you go to fill up, okay, still talking. When you go to fill up your gas at a gas station, you don't sign a contract ahead of time. There's an implicit contract you're going to pay for your gas. If you pump and dump, if you just bolt off, then yeah, you can be tracked down from your license plate and you can be hauled into court. So yeah, the breaking of implicit contracts can absolutely get you hauled into court.
So you're just passing the can down the road. And then the question is, what punishment do you think the court can be justified in imposing on him? So, okay, so fine, I'll agree with that. He can go to a court, but then what punishment do you think is fitting for sharing a picture?
Okay, so you came on very hard. I just want to give people the lay of the land at the moment. So this fine young gentleman, who I think has a bad conscience, although that we don't know for sure, and I don't want to overanalyze, but this fine gentleman came in very hard, saying I was over emotional. I think I'm giving rational arguments. He said that the young man should face no sanctions.
I did not say that.
And I said. You said you said the young man should face sanctions.
The question is, what sanctions? I'm okay with shaming. I'm okay with ostracism, but not jail.
Sanctions generally means something legal.
Yeah. So you can be, I don't know.
I mean, if you sanction a country or a product, generally that means something legal. But anyway, we don't want to get hung up.
My only question was about jail.
Okay, so you accept implicit contracts. You accept that the girl was underage. You accept that she did not say that she allowed the man to, or the young man to spread her image. And you accept that there are sanctions for violations of implicit contracts.
What does sanctions mean?
All we are at the moment is haggling over what the punishments could or should be.
You casually said he should be jailed. I mean,
and
that's a serious punishment for sharing an image. I mean, you can't jail. You can't.
Okay, it's not sharing an image. The fact that it is sharing against the person's capacity to even approve of it. It is sharing sexually explicit material of a child, my friend. It is not sharing an image.
Yes, it is an image. I mean, yeah, okay.
Does it not trouble you? Hang on. Does it not trouble you at all that a child's sexually explicit image is shared against her will? Does that trouble you at all?
I'm a free speech absolutist. I'm a nudist, perhaps. I'm okay with nudism. We're different on this. I don't expect you to become a nudist, but and you're appealing to emotion.
This is not a question. This is not a question of nudism. Don't hedge and don't pull this bullshit. Okay, this is not a question of nudism. If adults want to share their sexually explicit images, go for it. I don't care, as long as they're not violating implicit contracts. If somebody sends a nude picture to someone else and says, by all means, go share it on the internet, I think that's stupid. I think it's unwise, but that's their choice. We're talking about a child.
What about it?
Not an adult.
What's the difference between sharing a picture of a child or an adult? So this, again,
a child cannot consent to the sharing of sexual imagery.
Again, what is the harm that's being done here? Who's the victim? How was he victimized? Sometimes you would say that the problem is actually the way society handles it, like the way people will react to this.
Okay, let's try it this way. What if it's a 6-year-old girl?
Same. If the onus is on the person with the gun.
What is it? What if it is a 6-year-old?
I don't see any harm.
Whose naked picture is being shared on the internet.
I don't see the harm that's being done here. Is she physically hurt? Is she psychologically hurt? Where is the harm done?
Yes, of course she's psychologically hurt. Because when she gets older and she realizes that her naked pictures have been shared for strangers to masturbate over against her will, that will be extremely traumatic for her, extremely upsetting for her, and would be a massive betrayal of any caregiver's right or responsibility to protect her.
You're assuming all this. Why would images be harmful? I don't understand why you think that would be harmful or why it would hurt her. And why would it hurt her as an adult but not as a teenager?
Well, it does hurt her as a teenager.
Then why did you say when
have you ever talked? Have you? Hang on. Have you ever talked to, let's say, a girl who's had sexually explicit images shared against her will, Have you ever talked to someone like that?
I've heard of cases like this, and everyone.
Have you ever talked to someone? It's a yes or no question. Not have you heard of cases. Have you ever talked to a girl who's had sexually explicit imagery shared against her will with others?
I know of a teenager where this happened to. Some ex of hers, revenge leaked her stuff.
Have you ever talked with
a teenager?
girl
Yes.
Who's been in this? Okay, so you have talked with her directly about.
Yeah.
Okay, so why wouldn't you say that at the beginning? I don't believe you, because otherwise you would.
No, because I thought you meant younger. Teenager's a bit different.
Still legally a child. True. Okay, so did she experience any negative emotions from having explicit imagery shared against her will?
And her main issue is, the shame that her society would bring upon her. It wasn't specifically the image sharing. It was the effect that other people would have when looking at it, and the way they would shame her. It wasn't specifically the image that hurt her. Obviously, it's the effect that sexually
So hang on. So this is all bizarro land, man. So you said, "What's the harm?" But you've actually talked to a woman, a girl, and directly heard the harm.
The harm was done by society, not by the photographer.
You're saying, well, what's the negative? And the only person you've ever talked to about this expressed significant negative. So what the hell are you talking about?
The perpetrator of the harm was not the boyfriend or the guy. It was society. The guy actually taking the picture.
So what?
Well, punish the right people.
What is it? What on earth does it matter?
Punish the perpetrator.
What on earth does it? Okay, let me talk. What on earth does it matter who the harm comes from if the harm is coming from a significant number of people? So let me put it to you this way. Let's say that you and I have competing restaurants across the street, right? And I spread a rumor that I found the arse end of a rat in the soup you served me, right? And this costs you a lot of business because people don't want to eat it in a restaurant where you get the arse end of a soup in your clam chowder. Right? So let's say this costs you $1 million of lost business, right? Am I responsible for any of that loss that you've experienced? I lie about your food and cost you a lot of business.
I would actually say no, but I can understand the argument. However, this is not what's happening here, because that's a lie. Like that's a form of fraud and dishonesty.
You have to. Of course, the analogy is not exact. That's why it's a huge difference, because analogy.
Lying is lying and making that's a dangerous lie. Nudity is not a dangerous lie. That's just honesty. It's your body. It's a huge. You can't make that comparison.
Okay, I understand that an analogy is an analogy. If you can't understand that analogy is imperfect by definition, then you're just not smart enough.
The problem with lying about a restaurant is you're
okay. You need to. If you interrupt me again, we're done. All right.
Sorry.
This just can't be the conversation. All right. So if we accept that if I lie about your business and cost you $500,000, you would take me to court for slander or it would be slander, I think, or defamation. I can't remember the two. But so let's just say defamation, right? So you would take me to court because my lies have directly cost you money. Now, in most common law court systems, there is something called pain and suffering. In other words, if you have caused me significant and objective pain and suffering, in other words, any reasonable person would experience pain and suffering as a result of this, even if I haven't lost money. Let's say that you lie about me having an affair and my wife wants to leave me and I go through a lot of pain and suffering, even though it hasn't directly cost me money yet, then I might take you to court and pain and suffering would be recognized as something that you might have to pay for. Now, you can disagree with common law if you want, but then we're in an entirely different conversation about a society that doesn't exist. So, and societies would in general deal with that. Most societies do and have throughout human history, at least in the West. So causing someone pain and suffering through lying or the breaking of an implicit contract is something that people can be sanctioned for. Now, children are generally sanctioned at a far lower rate than adults. So I don't know what the punishment would be for this young man. I don't know what it would be currently, and it would vary by jurisdiction. But yes, he should receive some kind of sanctions. I don't know whether those sanctions would be some sort of incarceration or some sort of, I don't think that would be ideal. I think what would be ideal would be some sort of counseling or some sort of therapy to figure out why he's so cold-hearted and so destructive of somebody else's peace of mind and privacy that he would share a sexually explicit image of a child to others. That would be an indication of a severe problem in the personality. So, yeah, for sure, you can be sanctioned for causing someone else pain and suffering. Now, if I do the $500,000 damage against your restaurant, and you say, well, no, the damage isn't caused. And I say, no, the damage isn't caused by me. The damage is caused by all these irrational people who believed me, who just didn't go to your restaurant. That doesn't matter. The fact is that I told this lie and you suffered $500,000 in losses. Me blaming the people for what they do is irrelevant. And in the same way, if somebody shares a sexually explicit image of a child and she suffers as a result, as she will, it doesn't really matter if it's society or others. The suffering is real and objective, and any reasonable person would suffer under those circumstances. So please go ahead.
And any kind of physical incarceration of him is a NAP violation. It's far from clear that she suffered greatly. The girl that I know didn't really suffer that much. Like, you haven't made the case that she suffered greatly. Like, if she suffered $1 million, I can understand your case, but that's far from clear. There might have actually been, to play the devil's advocate, there might have been credible or decent reasons why he did this. Maybe she wasn't a good girl. So many things here.
What?
Maybe she was a bad girl.
Maybe she wasn't a
Right.
good girl, so he can share sexually explicit images of a child. Do you hear yourself at all? Does this register with your conscience at all?
I mean, as you know, people don't change, right? So even a teenager, they might not be the best person in the world.
Okay, you're just too creepy and sinister. You're done. Yeah, you're too creepy, man. You really need to seek some help.
Appeal to emotion. This is appeal to emotion.
Conversation. No, this is an appeal to revulsion.
Exactly,
bro. This is a appeal to repulsion. So yeah, this is like really nasty and vile. And
you're violating the NAP, sir.
To my show. I invite you to not listen to my show, and I definitely invite you to go and see a therapist and try and deal with this, because you are definitely going down a very dangerous path of cold-hearted exploitation. So I'm going to remove this fellow, and that was quite unpleasant. And I'm sorry to have, maybe it's interesting for you guys to see this kind of stuff. But yeah, that was definitely not much of a plus. No way.